The Green Goblin is at least one of Spider-Man's most iconic villains, and he has a lot of iconic villains, honestly. While Willem Dafoe's Goblin absolutely stole the spotlight in the first Sam Raimi Spider-Man, Chris Cooper's Norman Osborn really didn't have a chance to shine in the Amazing Spider-Man movies, mostly because they killed him off really early on to the second one, and he wasn't even shown at all in the first one. But what if he had been in the first one? Now, The Amazing Spider-Man begins not with a weird-ass game of hide-and-seek, but instead an argument being shown between Richard Parker and Norman Osborn about weaponizing the Spider Serum. Richard then storms out when they can't come to an agreement, and he comes home to find that somebody tried to steal it and broke into his house. He then grabs his wife Mary and their son Peter, and they drop him off with his Aunt May and Uncle Ben like they did. Now, the rest of the movie goes the same for a while. Peter still goes to Oscorp to look for answers about his parents' death, and he accidentally overhears a conversation between Curt Connors and Ratha. And Ratha tells Connors that Norman Osborn needs a cure. He only has maybe 2 years left to live tops because of the Osborn family curse. So now Peter is the first person not employed at Oscorp to learn of his illness. So now we later see Norman walking around the lab. His disease hasn't spread that badly yet, and he spots Peter exiting the spider room. And he gets really suspicious and he tells security to apprehend him. So this leads us to a fun sequence of Peter using his new powers in order to escape from the tower. And he also avoids being identified since he didn't go there as Peter Parker, and Norman didn't get a very good look at his face. So now later on, Norman himself actually goes to Connors, and he demands that he speed up his research. Connors says, however, that the test had proved unsuccessful up until now, and they need to take their time with it, and this pisses Norman off even more, so he grabs Connors by his lab coat, and he remarks about how he once got rid of someone who didn't cooperate with him, and he can do it again. We then later see Norman reading a newspaper about Spider-Man, and he becomes convinced that Spider-Man was whoever broke into the lab. So now we later on see Norman, and he's in his bathroom just picking away at his face a little bit, Death looking back at him in his bathroom mirror, and he just gets angrier and angrier the more he looks at himself withering away, and he smashes the mirror with his bare hands. The cracks form what looks to be a spider web, and that gives him an idea. Then his assistant rushes in to see if everything's okay, and Norman just tells him to get a number for somebody. So now later on we actually see Spider-Man being attacked by a small-scale villain, but a villain that can still pack one hell of a punch. Maybe, and I hate to keep using it for this, but the Shocker. So now the Shocker isn't actually trying to kill Spider-Man. I mean, he's not against killing him, but what Norman really wants is for him to be captured, or at the very least, he wants his blood. Now, during this fight, Shocker actually wears Spider-Man down by putting a bunch of people in harm's way, so that Spider-Man will have to save them. And it's in this scene that Peter finally learns what it is to be Spider-Man. He puts aside his revenge quest for Uncle Ben's killer and becomes Spider-Man properly. So now, in the end, the Shocker is defeated, but he seemingly gets the last laugh as he obtains his blood. Now, Norman then, of course, as you can imagine, tries using it on himself. However, instead, he turns into the ultimate Spider-Man version of the Green Goblin. Now, I'm doing this version for 2 reasons. 1, to differentiate from Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin, and 2, because at one point they were actually going to do an Amazing Spider-Man prequel where Norman Osborn would have turned into the ultimate Green Goblin, so that's the version I'm going with. So now, Norman, by the way, knows that Peter Parker is Spider-Man now, because he had his blood after all. So now he and the Shocker actually attack Peter at his high school, and we get the same fight that we got, but with the Goblin and Shocker instead of the Lizard. And yes, we even still get the hilarious Stan Lee cameo. So now it should be noted that Norman Osborn still has his intelligence, and he thinks he can improve the formula by actually holding on to Spider-Man and experimenting on him. So he taunts Peter a lot during their fight. He reminds him of his parents, and how he was the one responsible for their deaths. So now Peter, in the end, is able to subdue the Shocker, who is finally arrested, while the Goblin, in the meantime, escapes. Soon after, we then get a similar final battle between the two that we did with the Lizard, except that Gwen Stacy is actually being held hostage by the Goblin, who nearly kills her by dropping her off the top of Oscorp Tower. power, but this is just to shock comic fans into thinking she's gonna die, and Spider-Man is able to rescue her, don't worry. In the end, Spider-Man handily defeats the Goblin with a little help from Captain Stacy, who still sacrifices himself like he did. Now, the last we see of Norman is him retreating to his country home, now transformed back into his human form, but he's noticeably a lot more deteriorated than before. His disease is accelerated because of the transformation, and we see him telling one of his assistants to bring his son Harry back from boarding school, setting up the events of The Amazing Spider-Man 2, and we're back on the timeline. The only difference is that Norman tells Harry not to try using Spider-Man's blood, and instead Harry spends the movie thinking he can try to make it better, and sure enough, he doesn't turn into a literal monster, but he still turns into this, a crackhead, really. So yeah, now I know that you guys requested in the comments that I do both The Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2 and that, Harry wouldn't be in it. But let me be honest here. The reason I didn't do The Amazing Spider-Man 2 as well is because, honestly, I just don't like this scenario. I honestly don't. I really appreciate you guys for requesting it. Believe me, I really appreciate you guys, sending me requests, even if I don't always want to do them. And I try to do them anyway. And I tried my best with this. But here's the thing. I just don't think that the Osborns should have been in the Amazing Spider-Man movies at all. Legitimately, I think the movies would have been better if Oscorp Industries wasn't in it at all. And I know you guys are probably thinking, well, how would they do the story without Oscorp? Just replace it with another science company from Spider-Man. Just, replace it with, the Life Foundation. You're good to go. You don't even need to do the Osborns. I mean, honestly, the reason, in my opinion, one of the biggest reasons anyway, that the first one was better than the second one, is that we didn't have to focus on all the Osborn family drama. Because really, they should never have even tried with that, in my opinion. They just did the Osborns so well in the Raimi movies, and what the Garfield movies really need to do is they needed to be different than the Raimi movies. They need to have different people, different villains, and honestly, I think the decision to bring back the Osborns in the second movie was just a bad idea. And I'm sorry, but I tried to do this as best as I could, and I hope I did a good job with it, but I just don't think Green Goblin should have been in the movie at all. And so yeah, if this seems at all weak, if this is weak compared to my other videos, that might just be because I'm not as passionate about it. I just don't think that he should have been in the movie. I don't think it would have helped anything. I don't really think it would have improved anything, because then the focus of the movie would have been on the mystery of Peter's parents, which it already had a bit of a focus, but this would have brought more to the forefront because of Norman's history with the Parker family. And, I know Connor's had one too, but this would have been a lot more prominent. And honestly, I'm not gonna lie, I hated the storyline with the Parker family mystery. I hated that storyline. And, putting the Green Goblin in it just would have brought that storyline to the forefront. And I just don't want that, and I don't think anybody else really wants that. As it stands, though, I do think Chris Cooper could have made a really good Green Goblin, and I would have liked to see the Ultimate Green Goblin in a movie. I think that would have been really cool. Not counting into the Spider-Verse, I mean. Live action is what I mean. But yeah, I do think that Chris Cooper was done dirty. I think he should have definitely been in, The Amazing Spider-Man 2 more. But if they were dead set on putting the Green Goblin in this series, I do think the first movie would have been better. Or at least if they had just made him Norman in the first one, then made him Green Goblin in the second. Just, do something like that. I don't care. I just don't think they built it up nearly well enough to justify, Harry becoming the Green Goblin. It was just too fast. And Norman should have, been treated with more respect in those movies, if they were even going to put him in, which I don't think they should have, but, But yeah. But, okay, one thing I will admit I think might have improved The Amazing Spider-Man with this scenario happening is that, we could build up the Lizard more. Then the Lizard could be built up, throughout this movie and then become the Lizard properly in the second movie. Maybe that would have been better if they built it up even more. And then maybe they could introduce Max Dillon in this movie, or Max Dillon in the second movie, and then build up to him being Electro in, The Amazing Spider-Man 3. Maybe then they could, take their time with some of the villains. So I didn't think they took enough time developing, honestly. That's one thing I think this scenario could have helped. But otherwise, I really don't think Green Goblin being in The Amazing Spider-Man was a good idea. And if it were up to me, I wouldn't have done it that way. So really, this was the best I think I personally could have done. But let me know in the comments down below, do you think this scenario sucked as much as I think it does? Because, yeah, I admit, it's not my best work. But let me know in the comments down below if you agree with that, or if you think it's better than I think it is. Also, let me know in the comments if you would have liked to see the Green Goblin in The Amazing Spider-Man, or if you agree agree with me and think it was probably better off without the Osborns entirely. Also, make sure to give this video a thumbs up and share it with all of your friends on all your various social media platforms. And speaking of social media, don't forget to follow me on Instagram, Rinzler_Productions, and don't forget to ring that notification bell to stay updated on all of my future videos. I upload new videos every single morning at 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, so ring that notification bell and stay informed, and I'll see you all tomorrow morning in the next video.